Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the August 18, 2026 Prior Lake Spring Lake Watershed District meeting. And our first item of agenda here is called meeting order and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Okay, our next item of business is to approval of the agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections? Emily, you have an addition?
I would like to add the addition of the Bowser Clean Water Fund Projects and Practices Grant Agreement for discussion under other new business.
So that'd be item 5.4 on our agenda?
Correct.
Okay. Is there anything else to add to the agenda or take out? Okay. I'd be looking for a motion to approve the agenda. Motion by Manager Boyles, second by Manager Burnett. All in approval of the agenda as amended, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried 4-0. Okay. Now on our agenda is a public comment period. If anyone wishes to address the managers on an item not on the agenda or on the consent agenda, please come forward at this time. Good evening. Welcome.
President Loney, Administrator Geisy, staff, board members. My name is Wesley Steffen, 2350 Raymond Avenue, Jordan, Minnesota. I'm here on behalf to provide some input relative to the upcoming levy discussion and approval that will be taking place. After reviewing the current proposal for the Prior Lake Spring Lake Watershed District, which will increase the current levy for 2026 by 5.5% for 2027, two things stood out. Number one, the Watershed District does not foresee any additional Spring Lake alum treatments for the next 7 to 10 years.
Wes, is this related to our budget?
Yes.
So this is supposed to be a comment period on items not on the agenda. So we're going to have a hearing coming up next.
Very good.
Okay, so hang on to your comments and just want to put it in the appropriate place.
All right.
Okay? That's all right.
My apologies.
That's okay. And this is supposed to be an item not on the agenda, so go ahead and make your comments.
So Christopher Crowhurst, 1980 Lakeview Drive, Jordan, still in Spring Lake Township. The three matters that briefly raised in the workshop, but just wanted to formally put on the record here that I think is worthy of consideration. One is to applaud the rules that the Watershed District is trying to enforce around stormwater management, and to raise a concern that if Prior Lake chooses not to enforce those rules, that we as citizens are relying on the Watershed District to enforce those rules, as it's already, the Prior Lake is already allowing a larger impervious area than the rest of the state is generally. It's very important that the stormwater is being managed appropriately. So I would just like to add my support to the ongoing enforcement of stormwater management best practices. Secondly, I'd like the Watershed District to have an opinion on whether there should be a harmonization across the lakes of what is the appropriate impervious surface, as there is some strange disparities at the moment between the township of Spring Lake and the Prior Lake City ordinances as they stand today. And thirdly, I really would support putting some money away for the alum treatment.
Okay. Thank you very much for your comments. And we'll have staff look into them and get back to us. Anybody else wish to address the board? I think everyone else is here for item on the agenda. Okay? All right. We are now going to go into our 2027 budget and levy certification. This is a public hearing, and we'll need a motion to open up the public hearing.
So moved.
Motion by Manager Tofinelli, second by Manager Boyles. All in favor of opening the public hearing, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, so we're going to have staff present the 2027 budget and levy certification. And after that, we will ask people if you have any comments, come to the podium. And then we'll take all the comments, and then after that, we can close the public hearing and then look at a resolution. Okay. Emily, are you taking a?
I will. I'm just going to give a brief overview of what's included in the 2027 budget and levy, and you can see in the board materials in detail what is proposed. But in summary, the total proposed levy is $2,274,580. This is about a 5.5% levy increase. That has been our target the last several budgeting cycles. And in dollar increases, that's about $118,580 from 2026. When we look at what that will mean to people's tax rates that they see on their bills, that will be about 0.045% higher tax rate than they, or effective tax than they saw in 2026. Now we've tried to focus the budget vastly on accomplishing our projects and programs. A large part of this year's budget, 2027's budget, will focus on 4 main capital improvement projects. That's Spring Lake West Iron Enhanced Sand Filter, Fish Lake Alum, desilt improvements, and Highway 13 wetland. Now those projects will benefit primarily Spring Lake and Fish Lake, as well as the downstream water bodies. The budget also has a large amount of grant funds that are included in accomplishing those projects, so that'll be about almost 21% of the budget coming from grant funds. And I think another notable thing to say is that along the lines of focusing on those projects and programs, this budget is focusing on implementing those, driven by a lot of the grant success that we've had. We want to take advantage of those dollars, and so you'll see decrease in the alum reserve contribution that we have been making annually in past years, and focus more on dollars that will be spent on water quality improvements in this year, in 2027 itself. And with that, I'll hand it over to the public hearing. Or to
Okay.
Bruce.
This is a public hearing. Anyone who wishes to speak on the item, please come forward.
President Loney, board managers, Administrator Geisy, and staff. My name is Wesley Steffen. I currently reside at 2350 Raymond Avenue on Spring Lake, and I'd like to address the board relative to the upcoming levy decision you're going to be making this evening. After reviewing the current draft proposal from the Prior Lake Spring Lake Watershed District, which increases the levy from 2026 by 5.5%, 2 things stood out. That the Watershed District did not foresee any additional Spring Lake alum treatments for the next 7 to 10 years. For 2027, there were not any plans to set aside additional funds into the alum reserve for future treatments. If we look at the current lake clarity levels on Spring Lake, they have continued to degrade due to increased phosphorus inputs based on 2024 and 2025 data, as well as negative membership perception in 2026 on observations on the lake. Where the membership used to be able to see the lake bed in 2020 through 2023, after the most recent 2020 alum treatment, this is no longer the case. This was one of the reasons that at the 2026 SLA annual meeting, we highlighted the work that the Prior Lake Spring Lake Watershed District was doing for upcoming projects to reduce the phosphorus loading upstream. Our members are excited that several projects are in the work to address the upstream phosphorus loading, and also appreciate the work that is being done, as well as pursuit of grant funds to make this happen. It takes a lot of work for that to take place. Getting grant money is not easy. In addition to improvements to the ferrochloride center, the Swamp Lake and iron enhanced sand filter, and 2027 projects for the Spring Lake West, as well as the desal pond improvements, the Buck Lake shoreline restoration, and also planning for the 2028 silt removal project on Highway 13. These are all important things to happen. For the phosphorus, though, already embedded in the sediment, we appreciate the work the staff's been doing to reduce the amount of carp present in the lake, and are also greatly excited about the retrofitting of the boat that the district currently has with electrofishing equipment, which should make responsiveness to the carp espionage sightings more critical. This kind of leads to the next step, which is a need for future alum treatment on Spring Lake. The recent August 4th, 2026 Star Tribune article highlighting the removal of over 100,000 pounds of carp and the alum treatment on Upper Prior Lake and subsequent water quality improvement has caused members to ask, our members on Spring Lake that is, what is the plan for Spring Lake above and beyond the upstream projects? Initial feedback from our membership supports additional reserve funding for an alum treatment within the next 5 years. This is based on the current cost that the Upper Prior Lake alum treatment cost, which was approximately $1 million, and which also, those funds came out of the reserve fund that had been set aside in previous years. Knowing that an additional treatment on spring would result in more acreage and a higher expense down the road, starting to set aside funds now would minimize a huge increase in the future. For 2027, this would be best be accomplished through either prioritizing current projects or activities within the current budget, or by increasing the proposed levy amount. If one references the actual dollar amount levied against each parcel, the dollar amount resonates more positively as opposed to a percentage. For the proposed levy of $2.274 million spread out over the 12,046 parcels, the average for each parcel is $188, which represents a $10 increase over 2026 levels. Increasing the levy from $118,000 to $318,000 would result in an average increase of only $26 based on the 2026 levy. Due to the challenge that Spring Lake presents in improving water quality, the Spring Lake Association would support additional reserve funding be set aside and would appreciate any messaging to our membership on the phosphorus reduction projects, which would include the time frame and need for our future alum treatment. Thank you.
Thank you. Good comment. And state your name for the record.
Christopher Crowhurst, 1980 Lakeview Drive, Spring Lake. So when building upon what Wes just spoke about, the loading of Upper Prior Lake and the decision to invest in Upper Prior Lake's alum treatment is something that I want to raise. The Watershed District's own documentation on the website states that between 40 and 60% of the phosphorus load in Upper Prior Lake is directly contributed from Spring Lake. The internal loading is 12 to 15%. And yet the focus of the watershed district was investing in $1 million, in excess of $1 million last year, in removing phosphorus from Upper Prior Lake. Would it not have been far more efficient to have removed the phosphorus from Spring Lake? Because Spring Lake would have contributed far less phosphorus then to Upper Prior Lake. Given the watershed district's response in the workshop, which is that they are focusing on upper watershed projects, decreasing the load entering Spring Lake, it seems that there's an acknowledgement that the higher upstream that we can treat this problem, the better for all the lakes. So I would request that in future, if there is an investment in alum treatment, it's done in a more efficient way than treating a lower downstream lake that is getting the knock-on consequences of everything that's happening on upstream. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else wishes to address our 2027 budget? Any comments? Okay. Not seeing any. We would make a motion to close the public hearing. Motion made by Manager Burnett. Second by Manager Tofinelli. Motion has been made to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Okay. On to some of the comments, I'll try to answer some of them the best I can. We did talk a little bit of it at the workshop, but on Upper Prior, we did get a grant from Bowser to do the first treatment. And within certain parameters, we were required to do a second treatment, which we did. One of the disheartening things that we found out, that the price of alum and the cost of alum treatment has gone up significantly. So that's something that we have to take into consideration for the next alum treatment on spring. The other thing is we are really trying to get these projects to keep phosphorus from coming in. And once we've done a lot of those projects, then we want to do an alum treatment, which would have the most beneficial results of an alum treatment. So that's my take on it. Is there anything from board members or staff? Any comments on that?
It's hard to respond directly without knowing the exact citation for the 50 to 60%, but based on those numbers, my impression would be that might be old loading estimates from a plan, and we would always want to target the most effective.
And one of the things we are doing tonight, we are considering approval of the levy, but the maximum amount. So that's what we're doing tonight. We have a levy increase of 5.5%, which is, again, quite a bit, but we also are putting the money away for some future projects for next year. Anyway, that's, any other thoughts on the board? Any comments on the levy? We've had several meetings on this already, went through a series of discussions, and we kind of honed in on a 5.5% increase. Now, that doesn't mean we can't jockey some things around in the future, and we actually will have an official approval in December of the budget. Okay. With that, I mean, there is any discussion on anything from the board? On the public hearing has been closed, so we do have a resolution to consider, Resolution 26-419. Let's get a motion to put it on the table here. Motion made by Manager Boyles. Second by Manager Tofinelli. Okay. So we have a resolution which basically talks about the tax levy that we're looking at doing for 2027. It's in the amount of $2,274,580. And it's split up into administrative amounts and implementation amounts. The administration amount is $349,000. The implementation is $1,925,580. Any discussion on the resolution by board? Oh, Tony, you want to say something?
President Loney, the requested action includes, yes, the levy, but also the budget itself. So staff is recommending a motion to adopt Resolution 26-419, certifying the 2027 administrative and metropolitan water management tax levy in the amount of, as you had stated, $2,274,580, and adopting the 2027 budget in the amount of $4,765,900.
I was going to get to that point, that our budget actually, we do have a lot of budget reserve and grant funding incorporated in that 4 million, what was it, 4,765,900. So we have tax levy, we have budget reserve, and grant funding. So we are really dwindling our reserves that we've had to do a lot of these projects. And we did get some grant money that really has helped out with some of these projects. So we do have a pretty hefty budget for next year that's being proposed. Okay, with that, any other questions by board? We have a motion and a second on the resolution. I assume you're all ready to vote? Okay, all in favor of Resolution 26-419, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried 4-0. Thank you, everybody. Okay, we are going to move on then to our program and project update that we get from staff. And I don't know who's taking the lead on that. Mr. Anderson.
All right, I'll jump in with the projects and programs. Start off with lake levels. We've seen a consistent decline in water level in both Spring, Prior Lake, as well as other water bodies throughout the area. This decline mostly correlates with evaporation rates, which we've been seeing at about 0.2 to 0.3 inches per day. So those are pretty common middle of summer with dry weather like we've been having. You can see we had a nice rainstorm around late July, early August, where we received a couple inches of rain, and then it quickly evaporated. So the question's been asked, how has Upper Prior Lake's alum treatment been going? What are the results? Has it been a successful treatment? Through district monitoring, we're able to look at these values and determine if we've seen success. First, we'll look at this graph. These are bottom phosphorus results from their annual results here, showing monthly averages. On the left, you'll see the concentration. On the right, you'll see years correlated to different colors. Looking back, this is data showing bottom phosphorus concentrations throughout the year between 2016 and 2019 with the colored graphs. It's common that total phosphorus will build up at the bottom of the lake due to its natural conditions. Phosphorus will tend to release from bottom sediments when oxygen levels decrease. It allows this phosphorus to become unbound, and there isn't turnover throughout the year, and it tends to build up. So we see this climb, pretty common. You'll look at the very bottom of the graph, you'll see in 2020, this bottom concentration started to climb, and then an alum treatment occurred in Upper Prior Lake, dose 1 of 2, and then it dropped off and it remained flat throughout the rest of the year. That's what was expected. You can see again, these are the concentration graphs from 2021 through 2024 in the solid colored lines, much lower than the previous years, and that's as expected. Alum's doing its job. It's preventing phosphorus from releasing and building up in the lake bottom. So that dotted line at the bottom represents 2026, and that is at a concentration that's very low. That's where lab equipment at the lower end of the detection limit. So very, very little total phosphorus building up at the bottom of the lake. This is just a zoomed in graph showing, a little more specific years in 2021 through 2026. Again, that dotted line is what we want and what we expect. That's what success looks like in lake bottom phosphorus in our lake. So the project's working well, and we'll continue to monitor, and we'll have an update, I'm sure, at the end of the year and then following years.
All right, jumping over to outreach. It's been a while since we've given you an update on all that we've been doing to reach out to the community and share education. So I just have some photos of some highlights since April. We've had lots of tabling events with different partners. We participated in the spring showcase through the Chamber of Commerce, as well as an Earth Day event with the Shakopee Mdewakanton Sioux community. We participated in Real Cool Fishing School at the City of Prior Lake, teaching students about aquatic vegetation. We held a talk with Minnesota Lakes and Rivers on the impacts of boat wakes and how to mitigate those impacts, as well as working with a community advisory committee member on marking storm drains as draining to waterways and no dumping. We participated with Three Rivers Park District in July and another tabling event for their Big Year of Rivers program celebration at the Landing. And in July, we started our bookmark contest for Watershed Week. So in July, we worked with the libraries in Savage and Prior Lake to hand out flyers for students to decorate, or children to decorate for the competition. And then in August, we worked with the Minnesota Aquatic Invasive Species Lab and their partners to participate in Starry Trek, a statewide search for invasive species. So we've had quite a busy summer, got to talk to lots of different people on lots of different topics, many different residents in our community and beyond. So it's been a really great summer for outreach. And I'm gonna tell you about some more events coming up. Next week is our 3rd annual Watershed Week. So we have three free events, as well as we will be giving out the winning bookmarks at the library. So on Monday, we have an early bird nature walk, and that will be with the guide Michael Kurtz, who works with the Shakopee Mdewakanton Sioux as a cultural interpreter and naturalist. That will be at Pike Lake Park at 8 a.m., and we will be doing some birding along the lake and the nice trails at Pike Lake Park. On Tuesday, we have a tour of our new swamp iron enhanced sand filter, behind the scenes of Clean Lakes. We'll also be filming or having a showing of some of our films about that project that we showed in a board meeting earlier this summer, and that will be a bus tour. And then on Thursday, August 27th, we have a watercolor nature journaling workshop. We have staff from Scott Soil and Water Conservation District coming to that to talk about natural shorelines and native shoreline plants. And we will be working with artist Catherine Tong, who's a Minneapolis artist, and she will be leading a workshop on nature journaling with watercolor. That will be at the Spring Lake Township office. I forgot to mention the tour of Swamp Iron Enhanced Sand Filter will be starting at the Prior Lake City Hall. And then again, throughout the week, starting today, actually, we will have your free bookmark pickups at the Savage Library, Prior Lake Library, and then also at City Hall at the Watershed District's office. So lots of exciting things to do next week. We hope people will sign up and come. We have a QR code to our Eventbrite page that has all of these events. We prefer people to register for all of these. Registration is required for the tour and the watercolor nature journaling workshop. And I also want to highlight our bookmark competition winners. We had 6 winners, so we had 3 age groups for 2 different libraries. And on the back of the bookmarks, the participants shared what they love about the lakes, what the lakes mean to them. So some really meaningful quotes. It's very special, and we hope that you will pick one up and add that to your reading journey for the fall. All right. That's it for programs. Any questions on Watershed Week?
Yeah, I had one question on the tour for, I think they going out in the field to look at Swamp Lake. You said a film presentation. Where would the film be, in here or
That's
in?
planned for the Trailhead Conference Room that's downstairs
Downstairs?
of the City Hall, yes.
Okay. Any other questions by anybody? No? Okay, keep going.
Okay, on to projects, and I'll be starting that off with some updates about the Spring Lake West Iron Enhanced Sand Filter. Just wanted to let you know it's coming along well. We have the 95% design complete. We just need to have staff review that and comment. And then we are working with the landowner and legal to amend our easement. That was something that we planned to do as we progressed design on this project. We knew we'd have to adjust the easement boundaries a little bit, as well as some language. So that is upcoming in the fall, as well as approval of our grant. We are wrapping up the work plan for the Bowser Projects and Practices grant, so that should be coming along pretty soon here as well. And then we are planning construction for 2027 as early as this winter or as late as next fall.
Okay, I'm going to cover a project you've heard a little bit about, but you finally get to see a picture of it in action. So the picture on the left is the first dose of an alum treatment onto 100th Street Pond. And this pond was historically dug as a cattle watering pond. We tested it. It was very high in phosphorus. And so this treatment was broken up into what was planned as 2 doses. We were very conservative on the first, just to make sure we could monitor and do this safely and effectively. And that treatment was completed on June 30th. Our sediment cores showed that the dose that we applied worked well, but we need to apply more, which we knew would likely be an outcome. And a recommendation in that adaptive management was to split that second dose into 2, just to be able to better control for the natural pH of that pond. So we are currently looking for quotes for that second and third treatment. We anticipate it will likely be the same applicator who completed the first one. Those treatments still fit within the existing budget and would occur sometime this fall, about 2 weeks apart from each other. If you recall, the original plan and proposal for this pond was to excavate, and that was estimated at with an extra 0 behind it. So we've got still a lot of cost savings, even with these extra visits out to do the treatment. And we see that it's going to be successful. So that's an update on 200th Street Pond alum treatment. Also wanted to update you on the Buck Stream stabilization. We completed the first phase of this in 2024. This is the next section of the stream, working to address the eroding stream banks and the nutrients it's contributing to Buck Lake and then downstream Spring Lake. We're at 30% design completed currently and have grant funds to support that construction in 2027. We are meeting with landowners to make sure that design stays in step with what works for their property, and we'll be working out agreements with them accordingly. Any questions on projects?
Any questions? Manager Boyles.
President earlier referred to the cost of alum rising pretty appreciably. Is the same thing true on the smaller alum projects? Is the cost, or don't you know yet because you really don't have the proposals?
We don't have the quotes for the second and third treatments, but on the first treatment, it wasn't noticeable because it was such a low quantity. It's like 13 gallons versus 1,300 gallons, so it's small. It can fit in the back of a semi-truck or a pickup truck.
Thank you.
And that was a different contractor too.
Correct.
Okay, good question. Any other questions? Okay, well, let's move on then to Resolution 26-420, Upper Prior Lake Alum Phase 2 Budget Amendment. We're back to alum talk here again. So, Emily,
That is me.
it's yours.
Yep, as has been mentioned in this meeting several times, we completed our second dose of the alum treatment on Upper Prior Lake this spring, and our applicator noticed us that the alum prices had increased to a degree that they needed to increase their original bid price about 10% to $1,018,622. That work has occurred, and that contract has been paid out. This budget amendment is to balance our budget before the end of the year. So I wanted to just let you know some other changes that impact that total amount that we're moving. We also had to do some parking lot modifications to meet DNR's permit requirements to get a special use permit at the boat ramp, which is around $1,500. But we also saw some savings. EUR, which was our consultant on this project, didn't spend about 15% of their budget, which was great to have in the realm of overages. We also used less in our legal services than we had expected. So all in total, the amendment we need to balance this budget item is $78,945. And the proposal in this resolution is to utilize alum reserve funds to cover these alum-related costs. So with that, staff will recommend that the Board of Managers approve Resolution 26-420, amending the 2026 budget to reallocate funds from 611 Alum Internal Loading Reserve to 550 Upper Prior Lake Alum Treatment Phase 2.
Okay, so let's get a motion to approve Resolution 26-420 on the table here. So moved. Motion made by Manager Tofinelli, second by Manager Burnett to approve Resolution 26-420. Okay, discussions on this resolution. I just have one question. Was that in the contract that we had to pay the increased cost for alum?
We actually signed the contract after they gave us that notice, so our contract states that price.
Okay, so that was something that,
Yep.
and that's why we had an increase. Okay, any questions on anybody else on the board? Okay, I assume you're ready to vote then. All in favor of Resolution 26-420, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion approved unanimously. Okay, so now we're going to go to Linnea Prime Central Declaration of Conservation Easement. And it's, I don't know who's handling that.
I'll take it. Yep. Thank you, Manager Loney. So as you may be aware, the district has rules, and Rule J is all about buffer establishment. And new developments require that buffers be established around wetlands and watercourses. And it also requires that landowners dedicate a perpetual conservation easement over these buffers. We are not the permitting authority for this particular development, so instead we require a development agreement and a declaration of conservation easement. The development agreement was previously approved at previous board meeting last month. So this meeting, we are proposing the approval of the declaration of conservation easement. The one thing I will note is that after the preparation of the memo, all of the contingencies have been met. So we received the escrow check. We've received the signed and notarized development agreement and the signed and notarized declaration of conservation easement. With that said, staff recommend a motion to approve the Lydia Prime Central Development or Declaration of Conservation Easement for execution by the district administrator.
Okay.
No longer conditioned on any approvals or any requirements.
Thank you. So, need a motion to approve this declaration of conservation easement for the Lydia Prime Central Development. Anybody want to start making a motion? So moved. Motion by Manager Burnett. Second. Manager Tofinelli seconded. Okay, so we can bring it up here for discussion. It looks like it's pretty well done, I can say that. The one question I had on the map that's in the back here, I know County Road Ditch is in here, but it isn't labeled or anything like that, but are the buffer or the conservation easements there alongside the ditch, or are they in the ditch, or what exactly am I looking at here?
So the buffers are on both sides of the ditch. Carl, I don't know if you want to end up taking this.
Mr. Chair, managers, yes, not up on screen, but in your board packets is the depiction of those boundaries, and it is where it can exist on both sides of the ditch, on the property. So on the southeast, you'll only see one because the other side of the ditch is the other property. And similarly, along Highway 13, there is only one boundary, but
Okay.
for the east-west portion, there is buffer on the north and south side, and they are meeting that through buffer averaging. So they meet the minimum 15, minimum width everywhere along the ditch, and then you'll see some wider spots that are making up for an average of 30 foot on both sides of the ditch.
Okay, so that's outside of the ditch in a sense, a buffer outside the, okay.
Yep, it's defined from the top of bank.
Top
and
of
back.
Okay, very good. That answers my question. Anybody else have any questions? No questions? Pretty well done. We had the developers agreement earlier, so everything looks in order. We have a motion and second to approve this declaration of conservation easement. All in favor of the motion, say aye. 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 Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Okay, so then we have the item 5.4, which was added to our agenda, which is the approval, to approve the execution of the Board and Water Soil Resources grant, that we do, grant agreement. So Emily, do you want to give any information on this?
Yes, I'll just give some context for the late entry. The addition of this grant agreement is to represent the Bowser Clean Water Fund Competitive Grant Program, Projects and Practices. The district was awarded funds for both the Fish Lake alum treatment and the Spring Lake West iron enhanced sand filter from this grant. We just received the agreement today, an hour before our board workshop. Otherwise, it would have been included in the packet. But we're bringing it here for discussion and recommending to vote on it because if we are able to execute this grant agreement, the work under these projects, staff time and consultant time can be billed against this grant rather than against our levy for the month between this meeting and the September board meeting. We anticipate working on amending the easement for Spring Lake West and finalizing the 95% design there as well. So it would be, there are some costs, but if the board isn't comfortable, we could always push to the September board meeting as well. But it would be staff's recommendation that we would the board would motion to authorize district staff project manager to execute the Bowser Clean Water Fund Projects and Practices Grant for grant IDs C270030 and C270033, which are the two projects I discussed.
Okay. Want to make that motion, Frank?
Sure. So moved.
So moved?
Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion. Second by Manager Tofernet. Okay, go ahead, Frank.
And a question as well. Is this a standardized agreement so that there's not really much to debate? You want the money?
Correct.
Comply with all of these provisions. Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
And we do want the money.
$1,000,008. That'll turn your
You
head.
better take that. Okay, so we have a motion and second to approve the execution of this Bowser grant agreement. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. All right, that brings us to the treasurer's report. And Christian is in Denmark, so I'm going to do the treasurer's report for him. Hopefully I do a good job. If you look at your financial report, everything that's I'm going to be talking will be on the 4 pages in our treasurer's in our packet here. Basically, if you look at the financial report, our administration fund expenses are a little higher for the year right now because we do have a lot of things front loaded, and that's from the early part of the year. The implementation fund expenditures are on track for the year, except for permitting. So we are experiencing higher levels of permitting. Thus, we might have to see a trend here and might have to have a budget revision later on this year. The implementation fund expenditures typically increase late summer into the fall as a lot of our projects and things, activities are coming due. So we're going to see an uptick in this fund in the field in the future. Now, if you turn to the next page, which would be your treasurer's report, that indicates that we do have adequate funds to carry out our district activities. We have drawn down reserves this year and at the midpoint of the year. It's important to know that while reviewing these new expenditures above our approved budget, we will be reviewing any new expenditures from our approved budget for the remainder of the year. So it's going to impact our cash reserves based on what we are approving tonight. And the cash flow is the next page, which you see a cash flow chart. Really reflects the district payment for segment 1 of the PLOC and our North Channel Stabilization Project. It also shows a little bit of our interest income from the 2 CDs that we've been doing pretty good with that. And it shows that they're drawdown of our reserves. So, and that's typical for this year as we go on till we get our second half of our tax levy information later on in December. Let's see here. Yeah, and next month the cash flow statement will be updated to show the projected cash flow through June of 2027, which will reflect our budget that we just approved and the amount of cash reserve we're using and grant funding that we'll be incorporating. And finally, one other thing on the cash flow. I don't know if it shows up here very well, but there is $50,669 in there. It's called abandoned unclaimed property that the district will submit to the state of Minnesota. These are escrow funds that we can't find people to take them. So we have to send a process to the state of Minnesota in order to deal with this abandoned money. And then finally, the cash flow analysis. This is on the last page, page 60. Yeah, this is the one that's dated. Yeah, page 60 in here. It really talks about the ongoing program and project work, expenditures, the aquatic vegetation treatments of Curly Leaf Pond, ferric and water quality monitoring, and May and boat inspections, and administrative costs are about 10% of the district's expenditures. So with that, that's kind of our report for this month. We're in good shape financially, but we are drawing down on a lot of our reserves, which is what we've talked about in the past. Any questions on that treasurer's report? Probably more than it need to be, but anyway, more detail than you wanted. Okay, all right. So with that, we're going to go to our consent agenda, and this is considered one item of business. Consists of routine and administrative items not requiring discussions. It can be any item can be removed from the consent agenda at the request of board members, staff member, or member of the audience. Please state what items you wish to remove for separate discussion. So on our agenda, consent agenda, we have meeting minutes of July 21st, 2026 workshop, and meeting minutes of July 21st board meeting. We have meeting minutes March 26th CAC meeting, and we have the claims list and bank purchase card expenditures, and then we also have a resolution 26-421 DSILT improvement budget amendment. Anybody?
Motion to approve?
Motion approved by Manager Burnett. Second by Manager Tofinelli. I didn't see, there was nothing to be removed. Everything was pretty standard. All in favor of the consent agenda, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carried unanimously. I think I heard 4 yeas there.
Yes, you did.
Okay.
Sorry.
I didn't know if I heard you, Frank, but I heard your head nod. Okay,
The rocks
so,
moved around.
Mr. Boyles, we have a lot of stuff coming up here, a lot of meeting and event schedule. Would you please inform everybody what it is?
Mr. President, you hit the nail right on the head here. We know it's growing to be the end of summer, right?
Yep,
For
yep.
school students, and they probably are getting just a tad bored. And we've put some things in here, 4 different items that they have the opportunity to participate in, and it will change their summer. So Watershed Week is August 24th through August 29th. First, we have an early bird nature walk, which isn't really that early. Don't let that be your excuse.
9 o'clock.
It's early like 8 o'clock. Just get mom up at 7:30 or dad. Actually make it dad, much better. The nature walk is at Pike Lake Park, and we do prefer that you register so we can make sure we've got appropriate copies, et cetera. Where do they register? They just call our general number, do they?
They can find registration on our website and on our Facebook and Instagram pages.
Thank you so much. Second item is behind the scenes of clean lakes. A lot of people don't understand what it takes to get our lakes clean and keep them there. We have a new project tour, which is Tuesday, August 25th, 6 p.m. to 7:15 p.m., and there again, registration is required. I think we'll be doing some busing there, and so we don't want to have you running behind the bus. It just doesn't work out very well. Third item is adult watercolor nature journaling, Thursday, August 27th, from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. at Spring Lake Town Hall, and registration again is required. And the final item in our watershed week is our bookmark contest. Now, that contest has already taken place. The really cool thing is you don't have to do much at all but stop by and pick up your favorite bookmark. They're all very, very colorful, and they're wonderful work done by a number of different kids. How many folks?
6?
6? But how many people actually participated?
We had 60 submissions.
Terrific. Of all ages, right?
I believe 6 through 12,
Okay,
Yes.
no adults? Never mind.
4 through 12.
All righty. Our board, now shifting from our Watershed Week, Board of Managers Workshop will take place Tuesday, September 15th, 4 p.m. at the City Hall here and in the Parkview Conference Room across the hall. Board of Managers monthly meeting takes place here on September 15th at 6 p.m., as we are demonstrating right now here in the City Council chambers. The Community Advisory meeting Community Advisory Committee meeting will take place Thursday, September 24th, 6 p.m. here again at City Hall, but in the Wagon Bridge Conference Room, which is downstairs. And finally, a late entry is the PLOC Outlet Channel Cooperators meeting will take place this Thursday, August 20th at noon here at the Prior Lake City Hall and once again in the Parkview Conference Room. Just an exciting August and September, don't you think?
Is that all, Frank?
That's all I've got.
Good, good. All right. Well, there's a lot of stuff going on this coming next week for sure. So with that, we had reached the end of our agenda, so I need a motion to adjourn. Motion by Manager Tofinelli.
Second.
Second by Manager Burnett. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nobody opposed. Motion carried. Thank you, everybody. We are out of here at 6:57.
Wow,
Good night.
you know how to do this.
You bet.